All right, folks, today in Georgia, a pretrial hearing took place for two of the white men who were convicted in state court of killing Ahmaud Arbery. This, of course, now the federal trial is supposed to start on Monday. That is, they're being tried for civil rights violations against Ahmaud Arbery. And so, as you already know, they were convicted, again, in state court, but this is now the federal court. Well, the issue today dealt with a Department of Justice plea deal that was worked out between them as well as the two defendants. Now, this is the plea deal right here. In this particular plea deal, they would get 30 years in federal prison. But in addition to them getting 30 years in federal prison, as part of the plea deal, they also would confess to the actual crime, that they chased Ahmaud Arbery down because of his race. Now, in this plea deal, they also would waive any federal appeal as well. This would ensure they would be incarcerated regardless of the outcome of any of their state appeals. Now, this set off the family of Ahmaud Arbery. They were not happy with this deal because, based upon this deal, they would serve the first 30 years in a federal prison, and after 30 years, if they are still alive, they would then be transferred to a state prison. Again, this was for Travis McMichael and his father, Gregory. What the judge did not agree to the plea deal. Now, she did not. She agreed with the. I listened in on the call today, folks. She agreed with the 30-year sentence. She did not agree on the second part of the plea deal when it came to them serving the first 30 years in federal prison. As a result, she gave them an opportunity to withdraw their plea deal. Their attorneys asked for 48 hours to confer with their clients. She then said, well, you could come back tomorrow or you can come back Friday. They said, let's do Friday. She said, let me be clear, the trial begins on Monday. In the back and forth, the judge made clear she could sentence them to more than 30 years. She can sentence them to 30 years or sentence them to less than 30 years. And so that was the issue there. Joining us right now is Lee Merritt, one of the attorneys for the Ahmaud Arbery family. Lee, you sent out a series of texts condemning this plea deal. Why is that? Why that response? Because this was the statement that was sent out after the judge's decision from the Assistant Attorney General, Christian Clark, who leads the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. Quote, we respect the court's decision to not accept the sentencing terms of the proposed plea and continue the hearing until Friday. The Justice Department takes seriously its obligation to confer with the Arbery family and their lawyers, both pursuant to the Crime Victim Rights Act and out of respect for the victim. Before signing the proposed agreement reflecting the defendant's confessions to federal hate crime charges, the Civil Rights Division consulted with the victim's attorneys. The Justice Department entered the plea agreement only after the victim's attorneys informed me that the family was not opposed to it. Your response to that?
Kristen Clark, who has been a dear ally and friend in the Civil Rights Department, and even before she was there, did consult with us as attorneys, both I and Ben Crump. She did not talk to us about the condition of transfer from state custody into federal custody, and that's what the family was against.
So what is the issue there? Because if they go to federal prison for 30 years, they're in prison. They're not getting out. And if they serve their time in a federal prison, then they're going to state prison. So what is the issue here? Them serving it in a Georgia state prison versus a federal prison?
Well, as Kristen Clark will tell you, the Department of Justice is currently suing the state of Georgia because of the condition of their prisons. They're overcrowded, they have less funding, and comparatively, the federal prison would represent a lighter sentence, certainly so to the family. The family is convinced of that. And so they are not interested in any plea deal that makes that sentence primary.
When you say a lighter sentence, what does that mean? How is it lighter if they're not getting less time in federal prison?
No. So what I said was, if you consider the condition of the state prisons in Georgia, the fact that they're overcrowded, the fact that they're underfunded, the fact that that safety would be an issue for these men. This is something that the family wanted to consider when, and obviously these men think that the sentence will be lighter because they're fighting desperately to be transferred to federal prison.
Okay, I'm still trying to understand this. Okay, so is the family saying because Georgia prisons are overcrowded, underfunded, and they're in horrible shape, they want to see them there?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's why when you keep saying lighter sentence, that's really what you're talking about there. And so now, here's the other piece here. They're appealing on the state grounds. Was a part of the federal plea deal, they are admitting to the crime. Doesn't that pretty much negate any potential appeal because they are admitting to it that he was pursued due to race, and so you pretty much slam dunk. You can try to appeal all you want to. You ain't getting out because you're going to have this federal sheet of paper where they've stated that they pursued him and killed him based upon his race.
Absolutely. The terms of the confession where they admit to certain aspects of the crime. Now, mind you, mens rea, or the belief that they chased after Ahmaud because of his race, is not a factor in the crimes that they were convicted of at the state level. However, any confession is going to make an appeal more difficult. So, yeah, that would be one benefit to the plea.
Also, this DOJ plea bargain, it also would mean they can't appeal on the federal level.
Right. They waived their right to appeal as a part of the plea agreement. They could not appeal the plea agreement that they would have entered today.
So what would the family be satisfied with? That is, they a plea on the federal level, but they serve it in the state prison instead of federal?
The family is actually content with their sentence as it stands. Life without the possibility of parole in Georgia state prisons. This is a cherry on top. So anything that would come along and modify the conditions that they've already accomplished in the state sentence, they would oppose.
But here's the deal, though. Correct me if I'm wrong. When it comes to state, you have life without parole, but that's obviously on the state charge. You still have the federal charge. But one of the defendants does have the possibility of parole, correct?
And he was not a part of this plea.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's William Roddie Bryan.
That's correct.
Okay. And so if that's the case, is the family then asking the feds to withdraw the case? Because, again, the judge has said the trial is going to start on Monday. So if they come back and say, hey, because, Judge, you didn't accept it, we're not going to accept this. Let's say this thing moves to trial. Okay, it goes to trial. Let's say they are convicted. The reality is, I've talked to different lawyers who say, in a lot of times, when you have somebody convicted in state and federal, a lot of times the federal supersedes the state and they serve time there first. So even if the trial moves forward, there's no guarantee that if they're convicted, they don't serve initially in federal prison.
So this is certainly a condition that we spoke with Kristen Clark about. And she assured the family, because of the primacy of the state case and the fact that the charge for murder was more serious in terms of weight at the state level than the federal level, without a plea deal, they stay in state prison.
Okay, no. Without a plea deal, they stay in state prison if they're not convicted.
No, even if they're convicted.
Based upon what?
Based on the representations of Kristen Clark.
No, but is there a statute that says, is there a statute, and I've been asking people for it, is there a statute that says the state takes precedent over federal?
There are factors that are considered. It's not a statute. There are two factors that will play here. First, who received the sentence first? So the fact that the state received the sentence first, and again, this is as was explained to us by Kristen Clark, the head of the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ. So the fact that they received the sentence in the state first makes it more likely that they will first serve out the state sentence. And then in addition to the seriousness of the charge, here, kidnapping versus murder murder is the more serious charge. It's the sentence that they would play out first.
I want to bring in Glenn Ivey, former federal prosecutor, in here. And Glenn, I want to ask you that because, again, I see y'all sitting here, people saying, oh, this is confusing. And I need people who are watching, some of y'all like, okay, Roland, move on. No, I'm not going to move on because too many people out here utterly confused by what's going on because a bunch of y'all not lawyers. And you don't understand what's happening in the criminal justice system. And so I've been watching people all day, all pissed off about the plea deal. Some saying, well, I don't understand why the family is acting this way because you don't understand what's going on here. And so that's why we're having the conversation. Now, Glenn, explain to us, how does this thing work? You got a state conviction, but now you got a federal trial that's supposed to start on Monday. Well, what does anybody supersede someone? I mean, who works that out?
Yeah, I mean, typically the way that would work is you would do a plea agreement that encompassed the state and the federal case at the same time. So there'd be a coordinated effort. And then, typically the federal sentence would go first or be the entire sentence, because typically the federal sentences are stiffer than state sentences.
Now, because they have been convicted, these two, life without parole, that's life without parole.
That's about it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the feds, that they don't have a sentence that's going to supersede that from the standpoint of a term of incarceration. So you would think, as counsel just explained, and that he got representations from the Department of Justice that the state sentence could supersede that. And that would be the one that would be served first. But it is a little unusual for it to happen that way, I must say.
So you're saying in most cases, like in many cases, federal is served first?
Yeah, not only that, in most cases, the federal case would be the one that would drive
the whole penalty.
And what happened? And what happened here, Lee? There was back and forth between the state and the federal, and the federal folks said to state, you go first. You prosecute them first.
That's right. And there was a plea deal offered before the state entered their sentence. You may recall. And in that case,
hold on 1 second. When you said there was a plea deal offered, by whom? State or federal?
By the federal government.
Got it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the DOJ considered a plea deal prior to the state sentencing. In that case, the men would have served their time in federal prison first. Because of that, the family decided to take their chances with the state sentencing to see if they would get a more severe penalty.
Okay, so you're saying that prior to the state, them being convicted on the state level, the DOJ approached them about a plea deal on the federal charges.
That's correct. Well, for both charges, as counsel just mentioned, they would have done the two of them together.
Got it. Oh, okay. Hold up. So again, see that sort of changes it. They were approached about a plea deal on the state and federal charges, and the family said, "Let's wait to see what happens on the state with the state case."
That's exactly it.
Okay. The judge rules. Glenn, the point I asked Lee this. Okay, let's say the McDaniels don't accept. They said they pull their guilty plea. Judge says trial starts on Monday. Let's say they are convicted in federal court. Then what?
Yeah, it's a pretty unusual scenario. I hear counsel, saying that the Department of Justice represented that the state would go first from the standpoint of incarceration. Usually it's the other way around. Usually the federal sentence is what drives all of this process at the state and federal level. Usually it's coordinated. So it is a little odd. But, the fact that it would be a longer sentence, because it's a life without parole sentence, maybe that's a factor. I guess the other question would be which judge decides as well, which one would go first. And, and typically issues like where they serve their sentence, at least at the federal level, the judges don't even decide that. That would be the Bureau of Prisons who would make that decision.
Bureau of Prisons. That's exactly it.
Yeah. So, and again, it's interesting, folks like, oh my goodness, you're complicating this. Y'all, it actually is complicated because the fact of the matter is you actually rarely see this.
That's true.
I mean, you rarely see this. Take the cop who killed Walter Scott. Hung jury on the state level for murder charges. What did he do? He took a plea deal on the federal level as opposed to going to a third trial on the state level. And that's why he's sitting in federal prison. And so people need to understand that this is unusual in terms of how this happens, because what have we historically seen? Historically, we've actually seen people found not guilty on the state level, and then we've had to depend upon the federal government to convict them in a hate crime trial.
Rodney King.
Yeah, Rodney King case is a perfect example. And again, those two cases involving police officers, this obviously is different in terms of what happened. Well, Lee, we certainly will see when we go to court on Friday what they're actually going to do. The judges made clear that, look, if you don't accept this plea deal, the trial starts on Monday. To my panelists, either you have a question for Glenn Ivey or Lee Merritt. Julian, Omakongo, or Jeff?
Glenn.
Julian, go.
Well, what I'm curious about in terms of this, I love what the family is saying is make him go to the worst prison that to the worst prison they can go to. Is there any mitigation? Can judges or others say we want to give them a break? Yeah, I'm just concerned about how this plays out.
Well, if you mean at the federal level, typically no, because they're violent offenders. So, at the federal level, you have, they call them club feds. They're still jails, but they're certainly not what you'd see at the state level from the standpoint of accommodations and the like. But you also have the Supermax case, jails there too, where, the Unabomber is held and the Al-Qaeda suspects are held and, that crowd too. And that's 23 hours of solitary confinement day after day. In fact, human rights violations have been raised about that particular prison in Colorado. So, the family has a right to push for what it wants. And they're probably right that the state, if I'm hearing counsel right, sounds like the situation in Georgia jails is especially bad. But there's some tough jails in the federal complex of jails as well. So.
Well, I got this text, Lee, and I would like someone hit me and they said, so we now advocating for inhumane conditions in prisons?
No, the inhumane conditions exist, and we have lawsuits filed against Georgia state prisons concerning their conditions. However, why should these men be the exception when so many Black and brown people are actually held in those deplorable conditions in the state of Georgia? Or why do these men get the less severe conditions while everyone else gets the worst of the worst?
So I'll ask again, if the family then does not want this to be a possibility, are you going to ask the federal government to drop the federal charges against them? Because if you drop the federal charges, there's no conversation. They're going to prison. They're in life without parole. There is no discussion about potentially going to federal prison. Because as I said, you can move forward with this, and then they can be convicted in federal court, and the judges may decide they're going to go to federal prison first. And so all this was for naught. So will you do that?
Yeah. Roland, it's funny that you say that, because in our conversations with the Department of Justice yesterday, Wanda Cooper Jones made it clear that her preference was, if there was a chance that these men would be transferred to federal prison as a result of their conviction, then take these charges and, I won't use the language she used, drop them.
But that's up to the federal officials to decide whether they actually drop a case.
That's correct.
Jeff.
Yeah, there are several issues here. I want to say thanks to Attorney Merritt and Attorney Ivey for really getting into the weeds with this issue. And like Brother Roland said, there are people out here who do not understand the complexities and the layers when it comes particularly to sentencing. When you talk about the state system versus the federal system, some of those differences come into play, including the quality of management, the size of the prison system itself. The federal prison, I think there are about 122, 123 federal prisons, whereas there are over 1,700 state prisons, and they tend to be poorly run. Is this issue about, and this plea agreement that was rejected by Judge Wood, is this more about preferred imprisonment for these guys? They want to take their chances at the federal level as opposed to the horrendous conditions in Georgia?
Yeah, it certainly comes down to the conditions of confinement. And in Wanda's statement to the court, she repeatedly referenced the conditions of confinement is what she was hoping to maintain, that she wanted these men to serve their time where her son was murdered, where she raised her son, where she paid her taxes, in the Georgia state prisons. And if there's a problem with the Georgia state prisons from a humanitarian standpoint, fix the prisons.
Glenn, any comment?
Well, I think it's certainly a challenge. What's going on in prisons across the country, and this is true at federal prisons too. COVID is a challenge at the federal level. They have a lot of jails or prisons. Washington, D.C. actually faced some challenges with their jail as well. And I filed requests to get prisoners out of jail early because of these conditions at the federal level. So it's a challenge that I think we need to keep our eye on. I understand the family has a unique concern here, but the challenge of the condition of our prisons, we've got to keep our eye on that ball because they're inhumane. People don't get a chance to get the types of training and education that they could benefit from. So when they come out from a reentry standpoint, they've maximized the chance to really be productive citizens again.
But in the case of these two, they're not coming out. And if they do go to federal prison first, when they finish federal and they're still alive, they're going to state prison. If they go to federal prison first. Congo, final question.
First of all, thank you both for your tireless work on behalf of the community. The question that I have is that if they were willing to sign something admitting that they targeted Arbery because he was black, is there some possibility where some types of hate crime charges can also be added to whatever they're dealing with, just so another message can be sent as it relates to that area as well?
Well, actually, so that's what this plea bargain would be. So they would be the plea bargain. They would be plea bargaining to pleading guilty to federal hate crime charges. Right now, they've already been indicted and charged with violating his civil rights, federal hate crimes. So they're multitude of this. So they would be pleading guilty to those charges. And so today, what the assistant U.S. attorney said in the courtroom, she said it was important for the purpose of the public to get this guilty plea, to find them convicted on these hate crime charges. Lee, your thoughts?
Yeah, the hate crime charges are not available at the state level. And obviously they're pressing them forward in the federal case. However, for the family, they're mostly concerned about these men serving out their state sentence.
All right, then. Any response to that, Glenn?
No, I take that point. It would be a powerful, I think, admission by both of these men that what they did was based on racial animus. And I think that would be an important message for the nation to hear, really the world. But I understand that the family has a different priority on this.
All right, then. Lee, Merritt, Glenn Ivey, gentlemen, I certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So one of the reasons why it was important to have that conversation and give that time to it, because frankly, a lot of people out here, y'all know what the hell's going on. Yep. Okay? Here's the deal for everybody out here who's whining. I see y'all in the chat room whining and running your mouths. Today's hearing, you couldn't record it. We couldn't air it. So unlike the state trial where you got to actually see for yourselves what was being discussed, federal cases aren't allowed. They don't allow that. They did allow a phone line to be available for those of us to listen in to hear the proceedings and then be able to report it. And so it's way too many people. I saw stuff all day today. I saw people, the DOJ is trash. Kristen Clark, what kind of black woman are you? Okay, this is the same black woman who was leading the Laws Committee for Civil Rights under law, who's out there fighting civil rights cases. So, folks, the reason we have shows like this, so you can understand the law. so you can understand what's happening here. This is a very unique case that we're dealing with here that rarely ever happens. And so it's too many, and let me just be real clear. It's way too many black folks out here who are emotional on this whole deal, who are trashing other black folks who want to see them convicted. And so we have actually something that we rarely ever get. Justice on the state level and the federal level. Because they've been convicted on the state level, and the plea bargain was to plead guilty on the federal level. And so versus sitting here yelling and complaining and why we having a conversation is to allow our black legal minds to explain to you what is going on so you understand what is going on and you're not running out here in a fog trying to figure it all out. And so again, the judge gave them till Friday for the McMichaels. Only one of them was in the courtroom today, folks, so that their lawyer said, can we confer with our clients? So Friday, when they come back to court, they will decide, or let the court know whether they have actually accepted the guilty plea. If they withdraw their guilty plea on Friday, the federal hate crimes trial for the McMichaels will begin on Monday in Georgia. And we'll tell you exactly what happens on Friday in this case.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Roddie Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Like, wow, Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared. You dig?